All right, so it is 6 p.m. promptly, and we will go ahead and get started with our event. We certainly thank you all for attending tonight. My name is Dr. Jessica Hare. I am the Empowerment Director here with American Promise. We have a great lineup for you all tonight, and I will introduce our panelists shortly. But first, I want to start the call by thanking the Hatton Summers Foundation. We are grateful for the Summers Foundation for their support of this event. The purpose of the Summers Foundation is to encourage the study, teaching, and research into the science and art of self-government to the end that the American people may understand the fundamental principles of democracy and can be guided thereby in shaping governmental policies. So we will start this call with a short video from the Summers Foundation that I will begin to play for you all here momentarily. Share my screen. Here we go.
We come from different walks of life and follow different paths, pursue different professions, practice different traditions. We are different. Yet one thing unites us. We are Americans. We are the Summers Foundation, developing a network of thought leaders around the founding ideals of self-governance by funding scholarships and investing in programs that educate and engage Americans. The Summers Foundation, on the job since 1949.
All right, so again, we definitely thank the Summers Foundation for their support in this event tonight and everything that they are doing for American Promise and for our Bridge USA family. So tonight we have a great student panelist for some great discussion about their experiences that either generated trust in government or diminished trust in government. As we face the many challenges of police brutality in our world today, unjust killings, we are certainly finding that it is becoming increasingly harder for Americans to trust our political system and our judicial system. This distrust in our systems is definitely causing division in our society. So we have a great lineup of student panelists that I will introduce to you all. And just sit back, relax, and engage, and just be ready for some meaningful and thoughtful conversation. So first, we have Joshua Thomas, and I believe he's coming on here shortly. Hi, Joshua.
Hi.
Joshua is a third-year nuclear engineering student at Texas A&M University, and he is the founder of the Bridge USA chapter at Texas A&M. Joshua, welcome, and we thank you for being a part of our panelists tonight.
Thank you guys for having us.
Sure. And next is we have Nicholas Romano. Nicholas is a graduating international relations student at the University of Texas at Austin and an undergraduate fellow at the Clements Center for National Security. Nicholas has been deeply involved in promoting civil discourse on campus at UT by serving as the lead organizer for the Texas Political Union and as an advisor to Bridge, Texas. Nicholas will attend Navy Officer Candidate School after graduation with the intention of commissioning as a U.S. Navy officer. Nicholas, welcome, and we thank you for joining our call tonight as a panelist.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have Adrian Gonzalez. Adrian is a graduating senior studying government at UT Austin. A strong believer in democracy, Adrian is deeply concerned with the lack of governmental accountability and growing ineffectiveness in our Congress. Adrian is involved with Bridge USA and is the vice president of events at Bridge USA. Having interned for the Unite America and the Millennial Action Project, Adrian has learned about the structural barriers that serve as a roadblock to change and how it has negatively impacted our politicians' re-election incentives. Adrian, welcome, and thank you for being a part of our panelists tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Last but certainly not least, we have Alyssa Caver. Alyssa is currently a second-year student studying government and international relations at the University of Texas at Austin. She is the founder of Bridge Texas, the Bridge USA chapter on campus at UT Austin. and she believes strongly in the Bridge mission of cultivating solution-oriented political culture. Alyssa is originally from Houston, Texas. Alyssa, welcome, and thank you for being a part of our panelists this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. All right, so we will dive right into it. Like I said, we have this awesome panelist, for you all this evening. And I'll begin with our first question for the panelists, and I'll just kind of, go round robin with everyone. So with that being said, our first question, and I'll start with you, Nick. Can you remember your earliest memory of interacting with an elected official at any level of government? Think about how old you were, what happened, how did it make you feel, and was it a one-time interaction?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think my earliest memory of not necessarily a personal interaction with an elected official, but something that kind of formed my conception of what an elected official is, was hearing stories from my mother about her father and her grandfather, so my grandfather and great grandfather, and the impact they had on their local community in Canada. So my family and myself, we come from a rural province of Canada called Saskatchewan, and my mom's family was among the first to kind of settle their region of the province, and they started a farming community. And there was a teacher came in from the east to start a schoolhouse in the farming community, and there is but he didn't have any money, but he needed a horse to get to the schoolhouse. And my family were farmers and had horses, and the teacher had no money to pay for the horse, but he had the set of World Book encyclopedias, and now my family has that same set of World Book encyclopedias from early 1900s that are in our bookcase at home in Texas. And for me, it's a story about community building and about realizing, finding a way to help out and how to start the school in their community. And my great grandfather was a member of the Legislative Assembly in Canada, so equivalent to like a state house, state legislature here in the US, and was part of a legislative coalition that brought the grid to Saskatchewan in the 40s. There wasn't an electric grid until the provincial government brought it in. They spearheaded the healthcare program that went on to become what now everyone knows is the Canadian national healthcare system. So those stories were an integral part of my childhood, and kind of set the gold standard for me of what public servants and what elected officials ought to be. So that's what really has formed what I think is an elected official.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Nick. Next, we'll go to Adrian.
For that, Nick. So for me, I haven't personally interacted with any elected official, but my parents have interacted with the county sheriff, which for my county, it was Troy Nels for a really long time, and now he's our congressman. So we have had that interaction, but for me personally, I haven't interacted with any elected officials, but I've definitely interacted with government institutions. So, whenever I needed to go get my driver's license, I've been pulled over a couple of times and stuff like that. So I've interacted with the police and things like that, but not with an elected official. But my father had worked for the county for about 20 years. So he kind of explained to me, exactly what, the county government does and how that affects everybody. So that would be my experience.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Next, we have Miss Alyssa.
Thank you, Jessica. So actually, my experience, my first time interacting with an elected official is an interesting one, because I was a US Senate page the summer after my junior year of high school. So I went from having never interacted with an elected official to having interacted with a whole bunch of them, serving on the US Senate floor. And I think that it very much, did shape the way that I see our democracy, because you can see that no matter what side of the aisle people are very clearly passionate about what they believe in and about helping the people that their constituents are. You can interact with them, but you also interact with the staffers that are supporting them and with the cloakroom staff. And you get to see people passionately addressing what they believe is right for the country up close and personal, which, I mean, say what you will about C-SPAN. There's people there talking about things that are actually interesting and really matter. And I got to, have a live performance for 3 weeks of my summer.
So just really quickly, Alyssa, so whenever you had that experience, that live experience over the summer, how did that make you feel? Like, did you feel empowered, inspired? How did you feel in that moment?
When I was sitting on the floor, I mean, first of all, you're on TV on C-SPAN, so it's, like a little bit nerve-wracking, even though nobody's actually, sitting there watching the pages, sitting on the rostrum. But I think, honestly, the whole experience was, I think, enlightening, just because you're there. So to be a Senate page, you actually had to be nominated by your senator. So I applied to be nominated by Senator Cornyn, and I was. And you're surrounded by other students who are now the only student from their state that was able to get in, who were nominated by their senator and are all very impressive individuals and have gone on to several different Ivy Leagues, and I know a couple of them at Stanford. So being surrounded by not only the senators and the atmosphere, but the people itself in the program, really, it teaches you to respect and, gives you a really good sense about like what our democracy is about and what it's for, I think.
Thank you, Alyssa, for that. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Joshua. You're on mute, Joshua.
Thank you, Dr. Hare. So in terms of my first interactions with elected officials, I will say it's somewhat limited. My first interaction with elected officials would have been while I was still in grade school, relatively early on. So I'm going to try and speak from memory, but some of the memory is relatively fuzzy. It's been a long time. But what I do remember sticking out to me the most, this was like students at my school where we were allowed to like basically write in questions to be given to members of the Texas legislature. I cannot remember which chamber. I just remember that it was the state legislature. But my experience was not exactly overall super positive. The students wrote in questions and we got responses. Some of them were genuine, but a lot of them felt extremely patronizing. So that was kind of an experience that was not exactly the best. But as I grew older and had more time to examine elected officials beyond just what I had interacted with in grade school, that kind of opened my eyes to the wider world of politics and activism. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Joshua. So our next question for our amazing panelists that we have this evening. Looking back on your life so far, has anyone from the government ever come to your assistance? And thinking about this answer, this can include public employees like teachers, public safety officials. So, just, think about it in that sense and just kind of talk to us about a personal story about a time when that happened and, what was, what did you remember the most about that story? Like, what was very memorable for you? So I will start with Miss Alyssa this time.
Well, other than I was in public school up until 8th grade, so I had some great teachers and I had some awful teachers. That's how school works in my experience. And then past that, I've interacted with police officers a couple times in our neighborhood when they would come to, for example, National Night Out, and the police officers would come and they'd all say hi. And, my dad was on the civic club, so they all knew him, and that was nice. And then I've gotten pulled over a couple times because I'm good at many things, but driving is not one of them, unfortunately. And I couldn't say that either of those were necessarily positive experiences. The first time being, I was pulled over. I was driving at 10 o'clock on a Friday, and I was pulled over for driving in the wrong lane. And the officer was very clearly upset that I was out at 10 o'clock on a Friday because I was a high school student that shouldn't be doing that. And then the second time pretty recently where I was pulled over and the officer was doing, was asking a lot of, questions like, where are you from, to a kid that I was driving to an event, and he was Asian, and it was, where are you from? Where are you really from? And that definitely, both of those experiences kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, even though, I was not necessarily driving correctly. So I guess he was looking out for the public safety, but the way that he treated the situation isn't necessarily inspiring trust either. So I feel like those experiences are very contradictory to each other. So I don't know exactly what to make of that, to be honest, but it's definitely affected the way, like when I'm driving and I see a cop, I feel like I have a very different impression of that cop than when I'm in my neighborhood and I know the guy that is our constable and he drives around the neighborhood every day. And they feel very different, even though they're objectively, performing very similar jobs.
Okay. Next we have Joshua.
So for myself, my first kind of interactions with, government on any level, I won't necessarily go into a lot of detail on the exact circumstances, but my family had a personal tragedy. And so we got a very nice up close and personal look at emergency response. Emergency response and law enforcement. And that was actually one of the more positive experiences that I have had. It was really, really amazing in the circumstances that we were in to see how effectively they moved to kind of make sure everyone was okay, everyone was safe, and that, everyone was well taken care of. And so, that kind of was very much something in a formative picture of what government can be, what government should be at its best.
Great. Thank you for that answer, Joshua. Mr. Adrian.
Yeah, for me, outside of education, so the earliest incident with any, government, employee was, it wasn't quite a fire, but there was smoke in my house when I was about like 5 years old or something like that. So I kind of vaguely remember the firefighters being there and being able to help out. So there was that. And then I did mention I got pulled over a couple of times. So I had a couple of encounters with police. I wouldn't say those were overwhelmingly negative. One of the times I was speeding, so I kind of deserved to get pulled over. So, but the officer was pretty cool with me. I mean, he didn't give me a ticket, so he just kind of just gave me a warning. I was like, okay, just slow down. So I really did appreciate that. Another time I was on a road trip with some friends and we were just kind of at a gas station at 4 a.m, and then officer just came by, thought we were suspicious or something like that. So he, kind of came and checked us out, and eventually you kind of just figure out, okay, these kids they're not doing anything bad or anything suspicious. So those were my experiences. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I think just the police and the fire department.
The fire department. Yeah. We, it's funny that, you mentioned the fire department because, they are, they kind of go unnoticed a lot of times, but they are such great, great government employees that, we, need in our day-to-day, lives, and, they come to our rescues and, they are great, to have around. So, thank you for, sharing that. Last but not least, we have Nick.
Yeah, I think the kind of category of government officials that's had the biggest impact on my life are both active duty and retired military officers who, as you said in kind of my biographical sketches, I'm graduating soon and then moving on to officer candidate school to hopefully serve in the Navy as an officer if all goes according to plan. And the truth is I didn't always want to do that. I kind of came into college directionless, and I was just lucky that I had a few professors and a few other mentors that I met who were formerly served in the military, and something about the way they told stories, the way they interact, the way they treated you, the way they kind of cared about me as a person and my development, and not just how I was doing in their class, but what I wanted to do in the future and what my interests were. That was something that really appealed to me, and they were all the people who I've been able to interact with who are veterans. And they kind of embody characteristics that I saw that I wanted to have, that I wanted to be like them. And so I really owe it to them for first kind of setting an example that was inspiring to me, and then more tangibly when I began to be more interested in their careers and what they did in their respective military careers, kind of offering advice of kind of the world of opportunities in the armed services, and helping me first find the Navy, and then second find out what jobs in the Navy kind of aligned with my skill set, my interests, and it's not at all an exaggeration to say that wouldn't be on this path of desiring to serve and lead as a naval officer. I did not have these veterans in my life to serve as really excellent mentors.
Great, thank you for that, Nick. And I'm quite 100% sure that you'll go on to make them very, very proud of you and I'm sure they are already very proud of you. So next question. Has anyone from the government ever disappointed you personally? If so, let's just kind of think about what happened in that moment and just talk to us about what happened. I'll start with Mr. Adrian.
Yeah, for me, I was extremely disappointed. I mean, just very recently, because I mean, I didn't vote for Troy Nehls, but Troy Nehls is our new congressman, and I thought he was a person of better character than our previous congressman, which was Pete Olson. So I was kind of looking forward to just kind of better leadership for the district. But just the whole thing, that happened with the Capitol insurrection, and then he was one of the congressmen who voted to dispute the counting of the electoral votes. I was very disappointed when I heard that he did that, because I mean, it sounded like it was purely a Republican thing. There was plenty of Republicans who chose not to. So you didn't have to do that. And I felt like he only really needed to do that for, some sort of partisan purpose. And I didn't feel like that was what we needed, what the district needed. So I was definitely pretty disappointed, especially because that's like kind of the first thing I hear about him. He just gets elected, and that's kind of one of the first things that he does. So I was definitely very disappointed with that.
So okay, so since then, Adrian, our topic tonight is definitely talking about trust and distrust in our political system and our government. How has that event shaped your attitude, and could they have done anything differently to what could they have done differently to be able to repair the damaged trust that you now have?
Yeah, it's definitely shaped my attitude in a very negative direction. It's kind of painted this picture that politicians will typically just do what they will benefit from, that they feel is going to benefit their political careers in some way. So the only thing for me that would kind of restore that trust is if somehow the system were changed in a way where politicians would do what they would do because it's based off of some sort of like basic morality, or it's because, oh, okay, this is the right thing to do, or I think I'm making a good decision, and not necessarily a decision for that's going to further my career, or advance me in the Democratic or Republican Party. I feel like a lot of politicians make decisions that way. I'd like to see a move away from that, but just because I like to see it doesn't mean it will happen. But so I'm a bit cynical, but I'm also a little bit hopeful, because I know there's a lot of people who are trying to reform the system and things like that. So
yeah, thank you, Adrian. Mr. Joshua. So talk to us about, has anyone from the government ever disappointed you personally, and, what happened?
Well, I could go back to my first example that I had mentioned in our first question. I mean, that was disappointing on the level of it, you know, we are your constituents, and even though we're young, we're gonna be of voting age soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, our concerns are valid concerns, and ones that we will carry with us, just because we aren't, um, you know, uh, at the voting age yet and able to, make policy decisions. There are things about our futures and the direction of the country moving forward that we would be concerned about. Um, but beyond that, yeah, um, the events at the Capitol on the day of the riots, that was something that was absolutely terrifying to watch. And on top of that, the kind of rhetorical, I don't want to say strategy, but generally speaking, the rhetoric employed, um, kind of immediately leading up to it, and also for a good while following it, um, was very concerning to see, mainly because in any democratic government, the institutions are only as good as the the willingness of the people to protect those institutions. Um, and so seeing what felt like a kind of abandonment of that protection of those institutions was, uh, it's something that would fundamentally shake trust in the government, if not the people, the institutions themselves.
And you mentioned the events at that happened at our Capitol, which is very, very unfortunate. And granted, that definitely created more division in our in our country, and more distrust in our political system. For you personally, how has that shaped your attitude since then? And what could what could have been done, to possibly repair your trust in our democracy?
I think for me personally, um, it is something that has less to do with people themselves and more to do with the strength of the institutions themselves. Um, like, I can understand that, one of the um, great things about our political system is that anyone can get involved. That means anyone with great ideas or anyone with bad ideas can get involved, and people who would be interested in, power or self-interest or any of these things, they are also open to get involved. But the really scary part for me was seeing that, the potential fragility of the governmental institutions themselves that are meant to protect uh, protect the people and the government from those potentially bad decisions. Um, kind of seeing that be shaken in the way that it was on that day was something that was really, really concerning. And I think one of the things that would really be, uh, you know, soothing to not just myself, but to the public at large is, um, a really, really strong reaffirmation from everyone involved that these are our enshrined institutions that we hold sacred and that we will protect them. That's just a start. Um, the next steps would be, really attacking the problems that had created that circumstance in the first place, and going, what do we do to make sure something like this doesn't happen
Right.
again,
Mm-hmm.
and that these institutions remain secure?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Joshua. Miss Alyssa, let's go to you.
I mean, I think for starters, my earlier anecdote about the police officers is going to be applicable here as well.
Mhm.
And of course, there have been times when people have disappointed me with their voting record, but I also know that, if the person representing me is of a different party, then they're going to vote in a way that I don't necessarily agree with, and that's just kind of how the world works. So those are pretty much the ones that come to mind. Yeah.
So thinking about that, how has that shaped your attitude, and what can be done to regain a sense of trust for you in our
First, I
democracy?
really want to echo Joshua's sentiment that it's not really the people that matters, it's the institutions that matter, most of all. So I think that, first of all, January 6th, although it was a tragic incident that is going to, affect the way that we see other people on the other side, the fact that we were able to go through that, and, people are calling it a coup, and then we're going to come out strong on the other side with the person that was elected in office. I think that says a lot about the strength of our institutions to begin with. But the problem is that, not only in us college students, sharing that into our perspectives, but weaving that into our perspectives, but also America as a whole is slowly losing trust in the institutions that they're feeling don't necessarily represent them in the way that they want to be represented. And I think that if we were to address that head on, if we were to say, hey, how are you not feeling represented? How can we help you? And, work to make it maybe more obvious at a local level you're represented on a much smaller scale than at a national level. And if you're change the focus of our politics to local politics, as opposed to necessarily everybody thinks about the national politics and it doesn't affect your life nearly as much as the guy that's in charge of your city. I think that would be an instrumental shift in affecting the structure of our institutions, and the people could look at those institutions and think, this is a good thing that I want to support.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. Before I get to you, Nick, I definitely want to, just kind of, mention that, this is why education is so important for, our people, today, that, educate yourselves on our political system, because we do have a voice. And, now is definitely the time for our voices to be heard, because, we are the change that we want to see happen in our, political system. And, so it's important to get out there, vote, and be an advocate for yourselves and for other people as well, so that we can see change happening in our democracy, so that we can start to regain a sense of trust in our political system. So Nick, let's go to you, my friend. Has anyone in the government ever disappointed you personally? And talk to us about what happened.
Right. So I am, as I mentioned before, my family all comes from Canada. I was born in Canada, and we immigrated when I was a baby, and I naturalized as an American citizen last year. So I spent the majority of my life kind of going through the immigration system, and I want to echo the kind of sentiment that it's not just about people, it's about institutions, and of course, as we all know, the immigration system has flaws, but I think that there's something to be said about kind of individuals who have either failed to address those flaws or exacerbated those flaws from both a micro and a macro level. So on the micro level, I can recall numerous times, whether it was in a immigration processing office, whether it was at a border checkpoint, where an official with a certain degree of power over myself and my family has the ability to admit us or deny us, or further investigate. Kind of it's always a anxiety producing situation, and some situations have definitely been worse than others, of people suspecting my family for being something that we're not. And then on a macro level, I've also been disappointed by the politicians who have used immigration as a political football, and have really, everyone can see the failures of the immigration system, knows it needs reform. It's just a failure to do anything, and really just to use the failure for personal gain. There's kind of a reoccurring trope that legal immigrants. So my dad immigrated on a work permit and brought my family along with him, and there's a frame of thinking where people like me are the victims of undocumented immigration, because we did it the right way and other people didn't, and I find that really offensive to me, and the idea that people want to pick and choose good versus bad immigrants, when in reality my parents both have degrees in public policy. They both speak English. We had the resources to get legal representation when we needed it to go through the immigration process, and a lot of immigrants don't have those advantages upon arriving in the United States, and so the idea that somehow like other immigrants are hurting me because they don't have those same kinds of advantages, I find that irresponsible, and I see it as an attempt to avoid immigrants and to pass blame, when the blame really lies with the people who have been elected time and time again with the mandate of fixing the immigration system, and have failed to multiple times. So I think that's where I've had the most personal exposure to a failure of an institution and a failure of leaders to uphold their promises to the public.
So what do you think could be done differently, to possibly, repair the damaged trust that you have, in regards to that topic?
I would like to see some of the partisanship taken out of it. Like there's different people will invoke the rule of law, they'll invoke justice, they'll invoke all these things, and not think about, okay, how can we make this process better? How can we make it easier for people who want to come here to come to the United States? And so I would like for it to stop being used as a way to score partisan points. I think also as a matter of political strategy, there should be some maybe low-hanging fruit where we don't have to so many times just trying to be comprehensive immigration reform where we have to completely overhaul the system. I would like to see, maybe let's just start with DACA and let's fix the I forgot what it stands for, but we shouldn't be punishing people like me, young people whose parents brought them here and maybe didn't follow every law. They have just as much a right to stay here and work and study, and in some cases, serve in the military as I do. I was a baby when I came. So if my parents didn't follow the law when I immigrated here, I shouldn't be held accountable for them. Like I had no ability to either make my parents follow or not to follow the law. So it doesn't make sense that other young immigrants like me have to follow a different standard, and that shouldn't be partisan. I think that should be I think that's just the right thing to do, and so I would like to see incremental change. There's obviously lots of problems, but there's lots of opportunities for solutions, and if we can start making small steps, hopefully it'll build momentum to bigger steps.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
I've actually heard that one of the DACA, the Reduction for Childhood Arrivals, is one of the most popular proposals on the Hill. And the problem with popular proposals is that people like to tag things on that aren't as popular, so that they can get those things passed as well. And I've heard that's a lot of the problem with these common sense immigration reforms that Nick says. Like he didn't have a choice about whether as long as parents came there legally, nobody else does either if they came here as a kid. So I think that even, considering, the way that our leaders are representing us and letting us down, if you're looking at people that are trying to push a partisan agenda over trying to, actively make things, actively pass things that are making America better, I think that's something we need to be very concerned about long term. If they're not going to just, if you can pass DACA with all of this baggage and you can't pass it with the baggage, then why don't you just pass DACA because you believe it's the right thing to do, as opposed to trying to, score partisan points.
Absolutely.
And even if you believe, if you're a partisan that believes, these agenda items are important, then why don't you let them stand on their own merits?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all for, sharing that. That's very powerful. Nate, thank you for, being brave enough to, speak about that. Because, a lot of people aren't comfortable, speaking about it, or, even feel like they don't really have a voice in that, which, in our reality, we do. But, just to kind of wrap it up, you all are college students. Those days are behind me. And so, just kind of thinking, putting your mind frame into, addressing the political climate on college campuses, and, talk to us just briefly how you all are coping with that, as a civil discourse organization, and, how are you all staying healthy mentally, and being able to, continue with your studies and, continue to be successful, and just, how are you all coping right now as students with everything that's going on around you in our democracy? And you all can just kind of, go round robin, you can start however you want to do it.
Well, I think that the first thing that the rest of the panelists are going to echo is that organizations like Bridge that encourage people to think outside their typical partisan, circles, and to discuss civilly our disagreements and work towards politics that is solutions for all Americans is incredibly important. And I'm really happy that I've been involved with those with Bridge at Texas and nationally. So if you're if you're an attendee who hasn't heard of Bridge USA, you should go check it out, support it. They're doing good work across the United States, and I would like them to feel free to check it out.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah, I'm honestly going to go ahead and echo a lot of what Alyssa said. Funnily enough, you'd think that being involved in a politics and advocacy org, especially with everything going on right now, would be very, very fatiguing. And I won't lie, at times it can be. But most of that fatigue actually comes with interacting with the information that we're being given externally. But pretty much every time that we've been able to discuss, with an organization like Bridge, right? Those conversations that we have with, our fellow college students, that is something that is fundamentally very, very hopeful. Because for all of the rhetorical posturing and the partisan fighting that happens, and that we might get fatigued of by having to watch or keep track of day in and day out, because these are the decisions that will impact the future of the country, and the kind of country that we will be living in for generations to come. And but understanding that, in spite of all of this, that the general public is, just as ready for change, and just as ready to sit down and hash out the difficult issues in ways that maybe sometimes our elected officials are not willing to do. That is something that's fundamentally very hopeful. I think for a long time, especially our generation, and the generation immediately before us and the generation immediately following us, has been growing up watching a lot of political cynicism, a lot of cynical behavior on the Hill for a very long time. And I think they are just as ready for change as we are. And so over time, it will happen. And that's the hopeful part of it. It may be slow going, it may be painful at times. The process is much like growing. We'll have our aches and pains, but it will happen eventually. And that is the kind of hopeful part of it.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua.
I'll weigh in and say that, college campuses have a reputation for being very politically hostile environments. University of Texas has a reputation for being aggressively left-leaning. And there's a narrative out there that colleges, modern college campus kind of indoctrinates the youth to this kind of left-leaning ideology that's, might be anti-American, anti-Constitution. And I think that I myself, am kind of I kind of proved that wrong. Against all odds, I came to UT, and I actually moved more conservative over time. And I think it was fundamentally, college is a time to kind of learn about things and learn about yourself. And for me, conservatism is about gratitude, and really in college, I learned how grateful I was for whether, my great grandfather who helped build Saskatchewan, or whether it was the veterans who gave me advice and mentorship throughout college. I think that I'm deeply grateful for Americans who came before us. I'm deeply grateful for the institutions that we have. As flawed as they are, they also have a lot of potential, a lot of upside potential, and the ability to kind of unleash human flourishing. And so that's kind of how I see college campuses. I don't think they're yes, they're rancorous at times, and things get heated, but they're also, great laboratories for learning about yourself and learning what you believe and what others believe. And Bridge really has the potential to lean into this kind of open environment and make the most of it.
Thank you, Nick.
And I can weigh in for a last bit on this. So, I mean, just to echo a little bit about what Nick said, I mean, going to college and learning all that you can learn, you get to have great conversations with people with totally different backgrounds. So I think people need to recognize that, we have this ability and then take advantage of it. So just going and having these conversations, and then really just being empathetic when we're speaking to people and trying to understand perspectives, rather than knowing, okay, I know what my perspective is, okay, let me go debate somebody and tell them why they're wrong. I feel like there's a little bit too much of that, and I feel like just the media and just the culture around politics that we have kind of breeds us towards that direction. But you meet so many different people with different, ideologies in university, and it's a great chance to really depolarize and just kind of have these like meaningful conversations that aren't so partisan. So there's definitely an opportunity like that on campus, and organizations like Bridge are, they're doing just that. So
great. Thank you all. Amazing dialect, great conversation. I can't thank you all enough for being, for your willingness to, be on our panel tonight. We're going to open it up to our attendees, for some Q&A. So, if you're out there and you have any questions for our panelists, you can drop it in the chat. We can see the questions. So, at this time, we will open the floor for some questions and answers. We do have one. Let's see. Let me go to my chat. All right. So the attendee said that it is super hard to run for office as a young person because it requires so much money. So what advice do you all have in regards to that comment?
The question is actually in the Q&A section, not the chat section. That was from Brian Boyle, who is on with us, even though you can't see him. He's great, and he, I believe, tried to run for office potentially in Massachusetts, and has interesting stories about that. But it looks like
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do we get people from 24 to 40 to run for political office. For the first time in 40 years, the baby boomer generation no longer has the majority voting bloc. The succeeding 3 generations now have the numbers to defeat them. How do we use a majority as non-boomers vote to vote the argumentative boomers out of political offices? And the first thing I'll say about that is that it's difficult to say that we 3 generations even have a voting bloc, just because even, Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z, all of us have vastly different, political beliefs, and even, across generations and even in between generations. So, other than, of course, Brian's comment that it takes a lot of money, you're going to have to, first of all, get people that have a big enough constituency within that group that they're going to be a convincing candidate. And I don't know how difficult that's to be, but I definitely think it's harder than we think it is.
Anyone else care to answer?
Should I go, Josh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is a really there's not a lot of good answers to this, because there's just kind of institutional barriers to younger people, get into office, but it's not impossible. But it is definitely hard. I would say, the biggest problem is for most congressmen, and you can stay in Congress more or less as long as you want to, because most districts are kind of solidly in one camp, where if you just keep on running, you're going to win re-election no matter what, because you're the incumbent. So I think there needs to be some reform as far as making districts more competitive, because we have gerrymandering, obviously, and that has made it so that a lot of entrenched incumbents who are getting up there in age, they're staying there, because no one really is able to vote them out. So there's that. There's no easy solution to that. But definitely, we simply just have to run, because there's a lot of great examples of young people in Congress right now who ran really good campaigns and are getting in there. A lot of it is about identifying the opportunities where you can win, and making sure that a younger person is the one who kind of carries that mantle to the finish line. So I guess just being strategic about where we run, and then being we have some advantages over older people. Older people don't really understand social media quite as well, and the power of it and things like that. So we just need to get more in touch with our constituents and realize how large of a voting bloc that we actually are, like millennials, downwards in generation. We're such a large voting bloc now, but we also don't vote as much as some of the the baby boomers and the older people. So yeah, I would say just mobilize and hope for the best.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We have another question. I have heard that young people don't think government cares about people. Do you all agree?
I think that there's a lot of people that don't think the government cares about the people, and I think that it's not necessarily only young people. I think a lot of old people think that too.
Joshua?
Yeah, I was going to actually say something very, very similar to that. On a large overarching level as a whole, given the absolutely massive size of government, it can be really easy to see or feel that people don't necessarily care. I know one of the big complaints that a lot of people levy against government in general is that bureaucracy is a huge issue. And they kind of refer to the whole governmental institution as a whole as, really a giant, uncaring, unfeeling machine. But if you look at approval in terms of people who would be quote unquote considered bureaucrats, it's overwhelmingly positive. Talking about people who are, the actual people-to-people interactions are overwhelmingly positive. And people do care, people do want to do their best, but it's very, very difficult to legislate a governmental institution that actually cares, and especially when people at the top may not necessarily be motivated entirely out of the goodness of their own hearts. Fundamentally, for anyone, when it comes to a certain level of decision making, there's going to be a certain amount of self-interest involved, and that goes for people who are, writing the rules when it comes to these governmental bodies that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So I guess the best way to kind of attack that is by really who we put into office. And that is where we need to exercise the power of our vote most.
Absolutely.
So if we don't use that to its fullest extent, we won't necessarily see the change that we're looking for. We are the vetting process for the people getting into office. And like Adrian said, that's going to involve our coordination, organizing, social media. We have a lot of avenues, available to us for us to kind of really be effective.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to Nick, and then we'll kind of wrap it up because we're running short on time. So go ahead, Nick.
Right. So I think on that last question about, do young people think that the government actually cares about them? I would say, which government? And I think that a lot of times, Congress and the federal government gets all the attention. But if you think about like school boards almost exclusively focus on young people and their welfare and trying to provide the best education for them. And so I think, and this goes back to the first question we took, which is, how do we get young people to run for office? And I think the solution to that is local office and refocusing that. Not everything that Washington D.C. does should radically change the lives of every single person in America. I think that there's a lot of progress to be made on the local level, and I think that's passed over a lot because it seems like small potatoes, and everyone wants to be where the action is in DC. But as we kind of said at the start, whether it's firefighters or EMS or other local officials can have the biggest impact on our lives, and I think that's equally true for school board or city council or mayors or county officials. And so I put that forward as a way to kind of return trust in government is to bring it closer to people and spend more time really investing in those local solutions.
Absolutely. Thank you. We did have one question in the chat about an individual that recently joined American Promise and was interested in the Washington State chapter. So if that person, if you could please email me, jessica.h@americanpromise.net, I'll be sure to connect with you and get you involved in what we have here at American Promise and in your in your local chapter. So again, that's Jessica, JESSICA@americanpromise.net. And to wrap things up, we're going to have our empowerment coordinator, Marty Walsh, kind of, just give you all a brief summary about phase 2 of, of this event and just some next steps that, you all can take as attendees to, join with American Promise and Bridge USA. So Marty, you have the floor.
Great. Hi, everyone. I want to say Nick, Joshua, Adrian, and Alyssa, you all are amazing. Your leadership and voices will change our democracy. So great job. So there's going to be a phase 2 of this project that will occur in the fall. And phase 2 is actually going to be college students will compete in an amendment hackathon. And this is an interactive weekend experience where undergraduates from across Texas will form ideological diverse terms to tackle a particular system political issue of their choice. The basic prompt for the teams will be, please propose specific text for a constitutional amendment designed to strengthen trust between we the people and our government. So by the end of the weekend, each team will propose the text of a new amendment, and then present and defend the amendment to other participants. Participants will vote on each proposal, and the team that receives the most votes will be awarded scholarships. So participants will gain a better understanding of a constitutional government and the problems that are currently affecting that. So I encourage everyone to speak with your peers and family about trust in government and to get other perspectives. Also, we have the National Citizen Leadership Conference coming up, and there's going to be a breakout session called "How Can the Next Generation Strengthen Our Democracy?" And it's going to be with Manu Meal, who is the Executive Director of Bridge Alliance. So please attend the session and register on American Promise's website.
All right, absolutely. Thank you, Marty, for that. Again, like Marty said, our National Citizens Leadership Conference is coming up May 2nd through the 6th, and our theme is Connect, Commit, and Act. So we definitely encourage you all to register for that via our website, AmericanPromise.net. We hope to see everyone there. Again, thank you, Adrian, Alyssa, Nick, Joshua, for being so brave and inspiring, and just empowering other individuals, in your age category, to let people know, we have a voice, and now again, it's a time for our voices to be heard. Thank you, everyone who attended, and we look forward to seeing you all at our Phase 2 event, which will be in the fall. More details to come, and again at our National Citizens Leadership Conference, May 2nd through the 6th. Thank you all, and you have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.